Fast Flux. The evolving cyber threat introduction. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive into one of cybersecurity's most persistent and evolving threats. Today, we're going to explore Fast Flux, a technique that, despite being around for nearly 2 decades, continues to pose significant challenges to our digital security landscape. So much so that the National Security Agency recently classified it as a national security concern. You might be wondering, what exactly is Fast Flux, and why should I care about it? Well, by the end of this video, you'll not only understand this sophisticated cyber technique but also appreciate why organizations like the NSA are sounding the alarm bells in 2025. Fast Flux essentially serves as a digital shell game, allowing cybercriminals to hide their malicious servers behind a constantly shifting wall of IP addresses. Think of it as a high-tech game of whack-a-mole, where as soon as you identify and block one address, another pops up in its place. This makes tracking down and shutting down these operations extraordinarily difficult for cybersecurity professionals. The history of Fast Flux. Before we dive deeper into how Fast Flux works, let's take a moment to understand its origins. Fast Flux isn't a new phenomenon. It first emerged around 2005 and gained significant prominence by 2007. This was a time when the internet was rapidly expanding, and with it, the opportunities for cybercrime. In those early days of cybersecurity, defending against malicious websites was relatively straightforward. Security teams would identify the IP address hosting harmful content and simply block it. Problem solved, right? Well, cybercriminals quickly realized this vulnerability in their operations and began developing countermeasures. Fast Flux was one of their most effective solutions. The technique was initially popularized by criminal groups operating phishing campaigns and distributing malware. The Storm botnet, one of the largest botnets of its time, was among the first to effectively implement Fast Flux techniques on a large scale. By rapidly rotating through thousands of compromised computers, Storm could maintain its malicious operations despite significant efforts to shut it down. Understanding DNS. The foundation of Fast Flux. To truly grasp how Fast Flux works, we need to understand a fundamental component of the Internet: the Domain Name System, or DNS. Think of DNS as the Internet's phone book. When you type a website name like example.com into your browser, you're not actually connecting directly to that name. Instead, your computer needs to translate that human-readable domain name into a machine-readable IP address, something like 93.184.216.34. Here's how that process typically works. Your browser sends a query to a DNS resolver, often provided by your internet service provider. This resolver checks if it already knows the IP address for the requested domain. If not, it begins a journey through the DNS hierarchy, starting with the root servers, then moving to the top-level domain servers, like .com or .org, and finally to the authoritative name servers for the specific domain. Once found, the IP address is returned to your browser, which can then establish a connection to the web server at that address. In a traditional setup, a domain name might resolve to the same IP address for days, weeks, or even months. This stability makes it easy for users to access websites reliably, but also makes it simple for security vendors to identify and block malicious sites once they're discovered. How Fast Flux manipulates DNS. Fast Flux exploits this DNS resolution process by constantly changing the IP addresses associated with a domain name. Where a legitimate website might use a handful of IP addresses that rarely change, a Fast Flux network might cycle through hundreds or thousands of different IP addresses, sometimes changing them every few minutes. Let me walk you through a typical Fast Flux scenario. A cybercriminal group registers a domain name, let's call it maliciousSite.com. They set an extremely short time to live, TTL, value for the DNS records of this domain. Perhaps just a few minutes instead of the standard several hours or days. The TTL essentially tells DNS resolvers how long they should cache the IP address before checking for updates. Behind the scenes, these criminals have access to a botnet, a network of compromised computers infected with malware that allows remote control. These infected machines, often ordinary people's computers or IoT devices, act as proxies, forwarding traffic to the actual malicious server while hiding its true location. When a victim attempts to visit maliciousSite.com, the DNS resolution might return the IP address of one of these compromised proxy hosts. A few minutes later, when someone else tries to access the same domain, the DNS system provides a completely different IP address from the botnet. All the while, these proxy hosts forward the connection requests to the actual malicious server, which remains hidden and protected. The evolution to double-fast flux as security vendors develop methods to detect and combat basic fast flux techniques, cybercriminals responded by evolving their approach. This led to the development of double-fast flux, a more sophisticated implementation that adds another layer of evasion. In double-fast flux, not only do the IP addresses of the web servers constantly change, but so do the IP addresses of the DNS nameservers themselves. This creates two layers of rapidly changing infrastructure, making detection and takedown efforts exponentially more difficult. Imagine trying to find someone who not only changes their physical location every few minutes but also constantly switches the phone number you'd call to ask for directions. That's essentially what security researchers face when dealing with double-fast flux networks. Some advanced implementations even incorporate triple-fast flux, where yet another layer of infrastructure, often the domain registrar or proxy services, is also constantly changing. These multi-layered approaches demonstrate the continuous cat-and-mouse game between cybercriminals and security professionals. The technical infrastructure behind fast flux. Let's take a moment to explore the technical components that make fast flux operations possible. At the core of most fast flux networks is a sophisticated command and control (C2) infrastructure that orchestrates the entire operation. This infrastructure typically includes several key components. First, there's the mothership server, the actual malicious server that hosts the phishing pages, malware, or other harmful content. This server is carefully hidden behind multiple layers of proxy hosts. Then there's the control panel, which allows the cybercriminals to manage their operation. Through this interface, they can monitor traffic, update malicious content, and adjust the fast flux settings as needed. The proxy layer consists of compromised machines within the botnet. These machines are strategically chosen based on factors like geographical distribution, uptime, and bandwidth availability. A well-designed fast flux network will include proxy hosts across multiple countries and internet service providers, making legal takedown efforts exceedingly complex due to jurisdictional challenges. Finally, there's the DNS management component, which handles the rapid rotation of IP addresses in the DNS records. This component ensures that the TTL values remain short and that new IP addresses from the available pool of compromised machines are constantly cycled into use. Real-world applications of fast flux. So what exactly do cybercriminals use fast flux for? The applications are unfortunately quite diverse. Phishing campaigns remain one of the most common uses. By leveraging fast flux, phishing operations can remain online much longer than they otherwise would, allowing them to claim more victims before being shut down. Malware distribution networks also benefit significantly from fast flux techniques. Command and control servers for botnets can evade takedown efforts by constantly shifting their apparent location, allowing the botnet operators to maintain control of their network of compromised machines. Illegal marketplaces on the dark web have also adopted fast flux to increase their resilience against law enforcement actions. By making it difficult to pinpoint the actual server locations, these marketplaces can continue operating despite significant efforts to shut them down. More recently, as cryptocurrency has risen in popularity, cryptojacking operations, which secretly use victims' computing resources to mine cryptocurrency, have implemented fast flux to protect their infrastructure from detection and disruption. The NSA warning. Why now? Given that fast flux has been around for nearly 2 decades, you might wonder why the NSA is raising alarms about it now. There are several factors that likely contribute to this renewed concern. First, there's been a significant evolution in how fast flux is being utilized. What was once primarily a tool for cybercriminals is now increasingly being adopted by nation-state actors for espionage, sabotage, and other geopolitically motivated cyber operations. This crossover between criminal tactics and nation-state activities represents a concerning trend in the cyber threat landscape. Second, the scale of fast flux operations has grown substantially. With the proliferation of IoT devices and the overall expansion of the Internet, botnets have access to more potential proxy hosts than ever before. Some modern fast flux networks can cycle through tens of thousands of IP addresses, making them extraordinarily resilient against takedown efforts. Third, the techniques have become more sophisticated. Early fast flux implementations were relatively simple and had certain telltale signatures that made them identifiable to security researchers. Modern implementations incorporate multiple layers of evasion techniques, machine learning for optimal proxy selection, and integration with other advanced persistence methods. Finally, the stakes have increased dramatically. Fast flux is no longer just protecting spam operations or low-level phishing campaigns. Today, these techniques are being used to shield infrastructure involved in ransomware attacks against critical infrastructure, espionage operations targeting government agencies, and campaigns designed to interfere with democratic processes. Defending against fast flux. The challenges. Despite significant advances in cybersecurity technology, defending against fast flux remains challenging for several reasons. Traditional security approaches that rely on IP blacklisting are fundamentally ineffective against fast flux. By the time a malicious IP address is identified and added to a blacklist, the fast flux network has already moved on to different addresses. Domain-based blocking is more effective but faces its own challenges. Cybercriminals can register new domains quickly and cheaply, allowing them to abandon compromised domains and shift their operations with minimal disruption. Even more sophisticated detection methods that look for patterns characteristic of fast flux networks face challenges. As these detection techniques improve, cybercriminals adapt their methods to appear more like legitimate content delivery networks or other benign distributed systems. Another significant challenge is the global nature of these operations. Fast flux networks intentionally span multiple countries and jurisdictions, making coordinated takedown efforts exceedingly difficult. Law enforcement agencies in different countries often have varying priorities, resources, and legal frameworks, creating seams that cybercriminals can exploit. Advanced detection and mitigation strategies. Despite these challenges, security researchers and vendors have developed increasingly sophisticated methods to combat fast flux networks. DNS reputation systems track the historical behavior and characteristics of domains, allowing security systems to identify suspicious patterns even when the specific IP addresses are constantly changing. These systems analyze factors like how recently a domain was registered, how often its IP addresses change, and the reputation of its hosting providers. Graph analysis techniques map the relationships between domains, IP addresses, and network infrastructure, revealing the underlying structure of fast flux networks despite their dynamic nature. By identifying patterns in these relationships, security systems can recognize fast flux infrastructure even as individual components change. Behavioral analysis focuses on how systems interact rather than their static characteristics. By monitoring the behavior of network connections, security systems can identify the telltale patterns of communication between compromised proxy hosts and command and control servers. Machine learning models have proven particularly effective in combating fast flux. These models can be trained on vast datasets of both legitimate and malicious network traffic, allowing them to identify subtle indicators of fast flux operations that might be missed by traditional rule-based systems. The organizational security gap. Despite the availability of these advanced detection and mitigation techniques, many organizations remain vulnerable to attacks leveraging fast flux infrastructure. This vulnerability stems not from a lack of technical solutions but from gaps in implementation and security prioritization. Many organizations, particularly smaller ones with limited cybersecurity resources, fail to implement basic security measures that would provide significant protection against these threats. Regular patching, proper network segmentation, and employee security awareness training are fundamental practices that can dramatically reduce an organization's risk profile. Even among larger organizations with dedicated security teams, there's often a gap between the security technologies deployed and their effective configuration and maintenance. Security tools are only as effective as their implementation, and many organizations struggle with proper tuning and ongoing management of their security infrastructure. There's also the challenge of security priorities. Cybersecurity teams often face an overwhelming number of potential threats and vulnerabilities, forcing them to prioritize their limited resources. Fast flux and other sophisticated evasion techniques might not receive adequate attention when competing with more immediate concerns like ransomware or data breaches. The nation-state connection, perhaps the most concerning development, and likely a significant factor in the NSA's recent warning, is the increasing adoption of fast flux techniques by nation-state actors. Traditionally, nation-state cyber operations relied on sophisticated custom malware and highly targeted approaches, distinct from the more opportunistic methods used by cybercriminals. However, this line has increasingly blurred. Nation-state actors have recognized the effectiveness of cybercriminal techniques like fast flux and have incorporated them into their operations. This adoption serves multiple purposes beyond simple evasion. By using techniques commonly associated with cybercriminal groups, nation-state actors can create plausible deniability for their operations. When an attack uses methods typically associated with financial crime, attribution becomes more difficult, allowing nation-states to maintain a degree of deniability about their involvement. These techniques also provide cost-effective persistence. Developing and deploying custom malware for each operation is resource-intensive. By leveraging existing cybercriminal techniques and sometimes even infrastructure, nation-state actors can operate more efficiently and at greater scale. Conclusion: as we've explored throughout this video, fast flux represents a persistent and evolving challenge in the cybersecurity landscape. Despite being nearly 2 decades old, this technique continues to thwart security efforts and enable malicious activities ranging from commonplace phishing to sophisticated nation-state operations. The NSA's recent warning serves as a timely reminder that we must remain vigilant against even established threats as they evolve and find new applications. The cybersecurity landscape is not static. It's a dynamic environment where techniques, tactics, and procedures continuously adapt and evolve. For organizations and security professionals, the message is clear: implementing comprehensive security measures is essential. This includes not only deploying advanced detection technologies but also ensuring proper configuration, regular updates, and employee awareness. For policymakers and international bodies, the increasing use of fast flux by nation-state actors highlights the need for greater cooperation and coordination in addressing global cyber threats. The borderless nature of these threats demands a collaborative response. As we move forward in this ever-changing digital landscape, understanding techniques like fast flux and their evolution over time provides valuable insight into the broader patterns of cyber threats. By recognizing these patterns, we can better prepare for and respond to both current threats and those that have yet to emerge. Thank you for joining me for this exploration of fast flux and its implications for our digital security. If you found this information valuable, please consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth cybersecurity content. Until next time, stay secure in the digital world.